This story today is so gripping, it refuses to let go, unfolding between dust storms, gunfire, and quiet desperation. It's the place where fate brings together two souls on opposite sides of a brutal frontier. And it begins with one brief instant, easy to pass by, yet strong enough to change a life forever. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. You ever make a decision so fast it rewrites the rest of your life? Not the kind you weigh over coffee or whiskey, but the kind that lands in your bones, gives you a heartbeat to act, and then never lets you go. Mine came on a Tuesday afternoon in 1881, somewhere between scorched earth and nowhere worth naming, the moment a woman screamed across the desert. I was 45 then. 6 years buried with my wife, Mary Rourke. 20 years past believing the world owed anyone mercy. $800 sat in my saddlebags, the last of the money from a ranch I never should have bought. I was riding toward Prescott with one goal: vanish. Buy a scrap of land, put up a fence, live quiet, die quieter. The Arizona desert had no interest in my plans. 3 gunshots tore the air apart, sharp, violent final. Then her voice followed. High, raw, desperate. It cut through the heat like a blade through hide. I could have kept riding. Probably should have. I'd worn a Texas Rangers star once. I'd taken it off because I was tired of deciding who lived and who didn't. Tired of being right. Tired of being wrong. But habits like that don't disappear. They just go dormant. I slid my Winchester 73 free and pushed my horse toward the sound. What I rode into was 3 men, red spur traffickers, the kind who hunted Apache women and sold them south. They moved around her slow and close like wolves testing a wounded doe. She had a knife. One of them was already bleeding. I didn't call out, didn't warn them. I put a round through the first man's chest from 60 yards. He folded like his strings had been cut. The other 2 turned hard. One had sense hands up saddle, turned gone in a cloud of dust. The other reached for iron. I dropped him where he stood. Silence followed. Just me. 2 bodies cooling in the dirt. And her. She stood there in a deerskin dress, blood on her hands. Some of it hers, most of it not. She watched me like I was either a solution or the next problem she'd have to survive. Maybe 30 years old. Apache without question. She didn't look relieved. She looked alert. I suppose I did too. Before I say more, answer me. Have you ever saved someone you had no business saving? Someone who knocked your life off its tracks? If you have, you already know how this ends. Her name was Sahara. The meaning fit her, because she didn't wait for gratitude or rescue. By the time I dismounted, she was already kneeling, blade out, checking the dead man's pockets. You speak English? I asked. Better than you speak Apache, she said, never looking up. Fair enough. One of the men had clipped me in the ribs, not deep, but it bled plenty. Sarah saw it, pointed toward a shaded rock. Sit. I did. She tore fabric from her dress and pressed it against the wound. No hesitation, no asking. Her hands were steady. As steady as mine had been when I pulled the trigger. We didn't talk while she worked. There wasn't much to say. I'd killed 2 men. She'd killed 1. In the Arizona Territory in 1881, killing and dying didn't make headlines. It made schedules. So when she finally asked, "Why did you help me?" I didn't answer right away. I thought of Mary Rourke, 6 years in the ground. I thought of the badge I'd turned in. I thought of $800 meant for a quiet ending I was never going to reach. I don't know, I said at last. Maybe I'm just old and careless. Her eyes lifted to mine, dark, guarded, measuring. You're not that old. Old enough to know better. That almost earned a smile. Almost. They would have sold me in Sonora, she said. You saved my life. I owe you. You don't owe me a thing. Yes, I do. She rose, brushing blood and dust from what remained of her dress. I need to reach Stonewind Apache. 2 days north. I stayed quiet. You don't go inside, she continued. I know that. You take me close. That's all. Then we're even. I should have refused. Should have handed her my canteen pointed north and turned west toward Prescott like I'd planned. But I didn't. She wasn't asking for rescue. She was offering terms. I could respect that. All right, I said. But we leave now. Those men may have company. She nodded. No thanks. None needed. We rode north until the light failed. That night we camped in a narrow canyon that smelled of creosote and old blood. I set a fire. She sat across from it near enough to share heat, far enough to leave herself an exit. A cautious woman. You got a name, she asked. Depends who's asking. She studied me like I was a riddle with missing pieces. What did your wife call you? That one struck deep. I drank from my canteen, wishing it burned like whiskey. She used my given name. She's gone. So that name is too. Sarah didn't press, just inclined her head as if she understood that some things stay buried because they have to. What were you doing out there alone? I asked. Her expression tightened. My brother. Miko, he's 16. She stared into the fire. He has the coughing sickness, tuberculosis. The doctor says he won't last without medicine, real medicine, from Tucson, and medicine costs money. She nodded. I make baskets, jewelry. I thought I could sell them. Her jaw set. The Red Spur traffickers found me first. I reached inside my coat, pulled out $100 and held it out to her. Take it, I said. Get the medicine. She didn't reach for it. I don't take charity. It isn't charity, I said. It's payment. For what? For keeping me alive out here. For not letting me bleed out like a fool. I held the bills steady between us. Call it whatever helps. Just take it. She weighed the money, then my face. Finally she accepted it, folded the bills with care, and slid them inside her dress. I'll repay you. Don't trouble yourself. We let the fire speak for us after that. A quiet kind of silence, the kind that settles in on its own. And I'll be straight with you. I watched her then. Really watched. Not the way a lawman sizes up a witness, but the way a man does when he's forgotten what it feels like to sit across a flame from someone who isn't just a memory. She was beautiful, but not in the way newspapers and paintings lied about Apache women. Not exotic, not wild, none of that nonsense. She was beautiful the way a blade is beautiful, clean, purposeful, unforgiving. When she leaned forward to tend the fire, the light traced the line of her throat, caught the edge of her collarbone, where the fabric had torn. Something stirred in me. Something I hadn't felt since Marrow Rourke was still breathing. I turned away. You ever been married? I asked, steering my thoughts someplace safer. Yes. He died 2 years ago, Sarah said. A cavalry patrol shot him during a fight over water. Her voice was level, plain, like she'd told it enough times the words had worn smooth, or maybe it hurt so much she wouldn't let it show. I'm sorry. Are you... She tipped her head. You were a ranger. Maybe you killed someone's husband, too. That was fair. It didn't ease the weight of it, but it was fair. I probably did, I said. After that, we said nothing. Just listened to the fire crack and the coyotes argue with the dark. Before sleep took us, she spoke again, soft, unexpected. You're not like the other white men I've met. How's that? You don't pretend to be something you're not. I couldn't tell if it was praise or judgment. Either way, it rang true. The next day we rode into country thick with patrols. Stonewind Apache lay west. The San Carlos lands sat east, another place where the government penned families like livestock. The army didn't take kindly to Apache moving without permission. Near midday, we heard horses. Down, I said. Sarah slid off my mount and dropped low without a sound. I kept riding at an easy pace, hands loose posture, careless, like a man with nothing to hide. 8 frontier cavalry troopers crested the ridge. They were led by a lieutenant no older than 25 buttons, bright uniform, spotless, the sort who learned the West from dime novels and thought that was enough. "Afternoon," I called out. The lieutenant reined in, eyes narrowing. "You're a long way from anywhere, mister. That's the point." His gaze slid past me and settled on Sarah. "That an Indian?" My jaw tightened, but I kept my voice even. "She's my guide. I'm paying her to show me the trail to Prescott. You got papers for her, didn't know I needed any." He nudged his horse closer, too close. Sarah didn't move, head lowered, playing small. But I caught the tension in her shoulders, the way her hand hovered near the knife at her side. "Plenty of renegades drifting through this country," the lieutenant said. "We've got orders to check every Apache we find." I reached into my pocket and brought out a 20, held it where he couldn't miss it. "I'm just passing through. Don't know this land?" She does. "If that's an issue, I'll pay whatever fine you see fit, and we'll be gone." Greed wrestled with duty on his face. Greed won like it usually does. He took the bill. "Make sure I don't see you again. You won't." They rode off. I didn't breathe easy until they were nothing but dust against the horizon. Sarah climbed up behind me, her body tight against my back. "I hate them," she whispered. "I hate lowering my eyes." "I know." "Do you?" she asked. I didn't answer because the truth was I didn't. I never had to look down to stay alive, never had to shrink myself to avoid a bullet. "I'm sorry," I said. It was the only way. She stayed quiet for a long stretch. Then she said, "You understand more than most white men." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. We rode on. By late afternoon, the sky bruised purple and yellow. Desert storms don't warn you, they just arrive. The wind came first hot and violent, ripping at our clothes, flinging sand into our faces. Thunder followed low and angry. "There," Sarah said, pointing toward a rock face. A shallow cave carved by years of wind and water. We reached it just as the rain broke loose, not the gentle kind, but the kind that turns arroyos into graves and drowns horses standing up. In seconds, we were soaked, pressed into a space barely meant for two. Her body was against mine, not choice, just necessity. I felt her breathing, the heat of her through wet cloth, the smell of sweat and sage and something else, something I couldn't name anymore. "You ever afraid you'll die out here?" she asked. "Every day when I wore the badge," I said. "And some days now." I thought about the money, about Prescott, about the quiet life that kept slipping farther away. I thought about that quiet life I'd been chasing like a man running after a ghost that never planned to stop. "Now," I said, "I don't even know what scares me anymore." She turned toward me in the thin light. Our faces were close enough that I could feel her breath. I could have kissed her. Part of me wanted to, the part that still remembered what it meant to feel alive. But I didn't. "Your brother," I said instead. "Tell me about him." She blinked, caught off guard by the turn. Then a small smile touched her mouth, nothing wide, just a brief spark. "Miko," she said. "He's stubborn, like me." She paused. "He wants to be a warrior, but—" Her voice trailed off. "There's no place for warriors on the reservation. Just men waiting to disappear. I'll get the medicine," I said. "I promise." She studied me. "Why would you do that?" "Because I can," I answered. "And because someone should." The storm howled outside. Inside the cave we sat in stillness, listening to rain hammer the earth raw. And somewhere in that noise, something shifted in me. I wasn't thinking about Prescott anymore, or the quiet ending I'd planned. I was thinking about her, about Miko, about a people I'd been raised to fear, and about a woman who didn't need saving but let me stand beside her anyway. When the storm finally passed, we didn't speak of what almost happened. We mounted up and rode on, following the light as it thinned toward dusk. On the third day, we crested a low rise and saw Stonewind Apache spread out below us. Sarah slowed her horse and placed a hand on my arm. "You can't go farther," she said. "I know." She hesitated, eyes searching the ground. "But, do you want to meet my brother?" That question carried weight. A white man riding into an Apache settlement wasn't much different from stepping into a rattlesnake den wearing fresh meat. But the way she asked, careful, hopeful, I couldn't turn her down. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." We rode in at a measured pace. Apache men watched from the shadows, lean, hardened eyes sharp enough to cut. They sized me up and found plenty to doubt. One stepped forward, younger than the rest, a scar running along his cheek that made him look more dangerous than he likely was. He spoke in Apache. Sarah answered. Their voices rose and fell, tension tightening the air. At last she turned back to me. "This is Tassin," she said. "We were meant to marry, before Chayan." That explained the look he was giving me. "Tell him I'm just helping you get home," I said. She did. Tassoon didn't look convinced, but he stepped aside. And we rode into the village. Wickiups and canvas shelters dotted the ground. Cook fires burned low. Children kicked dust and laughed between the tents. It looked like every reservation I'd ever seen. Which is to say, it looked like surrender. Sarah led me to a small shelter near the edge of camp. Inside, a boy lay wrapped in a blanket. He was thin as famine, his chest hitching with every breath like it hurt just to draw air. This was Miko. He studied me with eyes far older than his years. "You're the white man," he said, his English careful but clear. "I am. You saved my sister." "She saved herself," I told him. "I just happened to cross her path." He answered with a cough, wet and harsh, the kind that rattles bone. When it passed, he fixed me with a steady stare. "If you hurt her, I'll come for you, even if I have to crawl out of my grave." I liked him right then. "I'm not here to harm anyone," I said. I reached into my coat and took out what was left, $700, and placed it in Sarah's hands. "This is for the medicine, and whatever else you need." Her eyes widened. "This is too much." "It's all I've got," I said. "Take it." She looked at me like I'd offered her something unreal, like she wasn't sure whether to believe it. Then Miko spoke again, his voice weak but firm. "Sister, take it." She did. And for the first time since I'd met her, Sarah cried. That night she found me near the edge of the village where I'd set my camp. The stars were sharp and cold overhead, and the air carried the smell of juniper smoke. "Walk with me," she said. We followed a narrow creek behind the camp and sat along its bank, listening to water slide over stone. For a long while, neither of us spoke. Sometimes silence carries more weight than words. At last she said, "Tomorrow you'll leave." That was the agreement. "And you'll go to Prescott," she continued. "Buy your land, build your fence." That was the plan. She picked up a stone and skipped it across the water. "You don't want to," I looked at her. "What makes you think that—" "If you did," she said quietly, "you wouldn't have given us everything you had." She wasn't wrong. "Maybe I'm just foolish," I said. "You're not," she replied, turning to face me. In the moonlight, she looked like something pulled from a dream I'd forgotten I ever had. "You're running. Same as me. We're both trying to outrun things we can't mend." "What are you running from?" I asked. Her voice broke. The fact that my husband Cheyenne is dead, that my people are fading, that everything I believed in is slipping away. She swallowed hard. And I don't know how to stop. I reached for her hand. It was the first time I'd touched her without purpose or need, just because I wanted to. Maybe we don't stop, I said. Maybe we run together for a while. She looked at our joined hands. Then she looked at me. And then she kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't gentle. It carried hunger and urgency, everything we hadn't said pressing forward all at once. I answered the kiss, and drew her in, felt the solid warmth of her against me, real breathing alive. We sank to the ground together, her dress riding up my fingers tangled in her hair. And for the first time in 6 years, I didn't feel like a dead man mimicking the living. We came together there by the creek, beneath stars that gave no thought to borders or reservations, or to the wreckage men leave behind. When it was done, we lay side by side, her head on my chest, my hand tracing slow paths along her back. I don't love you, she said softly. I know, but I respect you. And I need you. I know that too. She lifted herself on one elbow and met my eyes. My brother needs medicine. My people need allies. You could be that. She held my gaze. You could help us? And if I stay, then you stay. Not as my husband, she went on. Not as a hero, just as a man who chooses what's right. I looked at her, this woman who'd survived hell and come through it holding a blade and her dignity. Fire still burned in her eyes. She didn't need saving. She was offering me a chance to save myself. What if I'm not a good man? I asked. You're good enough, she said. Maybe that was all any of us ever get. Morning arrived too soon. I woke to Tassin standing over me, arms crossed, wearing a look like he'd gladly put an arrow through my skull. We're riding to Tucson, he said. For the medicine, he added. You're coming. I am, Sarah says you know how to deal with white men. I don't. Doesn't matter. You're coming. I looked past him and saw Sarah watching from a distance. She didn't smile or wave, just held still. I gave a small nod. So I didn't ride on to Prescott, didn't buy land, didn't build a fence. Instead, I rode south with an Apache warrior who didn't trust me and bought medicine for a boy I barely knew. When we returned, the night was still alive, still struggling. I stayed after that. Not forever. Nothing is. But long enough to matter. Long enough to show some of the young men how to trade without getting cheated. Long enough to help Sarah's people find their footing in a world set against them. As for Sarah, we weren't married. We weren't in love the way stories insist. But we were something. Something honest, something that didn't need a name. I still think about Prescott sometimes. About the quiet life I might have had. Truth is, quiet never held much value for me. I'd rather have this grit beneath my nails, a steady pull in my chest that tells me I still have work to do. I'd rather wake knowing there's purpose ahead and a woman who meets my eyes like I still carry worth. A man doesn't stumble onto home. Home finds him. And sometimes it isn't soil or walls or a fence line. Sometimes it's a reason to keep moving when every part of you says to stop. I don't know if I chose right. I don't know if anyone ever truly does. But I'm still here. Still drawing breath. Still learning how to stand where I once would have walked away. And maybe that's enough. Because change doesn't come loud or clean. It comes quiet, stubborn, earned. Even for an old man like me, finally let me send my deep thanks to you. Your presence means more than you know. If today's story awakened something inside you, don't let the trail end here. There are many more tales of courage, devotion, and faith waiting to be discovered. Subscribe, comment, share, and come back as we continue this unforgettable journey. Thank you truly. Aviso legal, barra disclaimer. All stories are intended solely for entertainment and may include fictionalized scenarios or dramatization derived from historical contexts. While AI assists in production, human creators supervise and adjust every piece to maintain sincerity, credibility, and emotional quality. We adhere entirely to platform regulations regarding AI, content ensuring no deep fakes or misleading portrayals. Licensed materials are used responsibly. Republishing, modifying, or extracting content without authorization is not allowed. We appreciate every viewer who respects originality and creative effort.